I slipped into the house quietly, balancing a brown paper bag in one hand and a chilled bottle of Pinot Noir in the other. Each step was measured, the stillness of the house making the soft creak of the floorboards seem louder than usual. A rare sense of satisfaction settled over me. The parent-teacher conference at the high school had finished earlier than expected, leaving me excited to surprise Anna with her favorite meal and wine. This was something we both needed. At 35, Anna was constantly stretched thin, juggling a demanding marketing job with the relentless pace of our lives. I wasn't much better, being 37 and often drained from my work as a history teacher. By the time I got home, there was rarely enough energy left to enjoy the evenings together. But tonight was different. I had envisioned a quiet dinner, light conversation, and maybe even finishing that movie we'd started weeks ago, but hadn't managed to complete. It was nothing fancy, but the simplicity of it was comforting. The house, though, was unnervingly quiet. Usually, Anna had some music playing from her phone while she cooked or folded laundry, something cheerful or one of her favorite podcasts about local urban legends in Portland, Oregon. Setting the bag down on the kitchen counter, I strained to catch any sound. Nothing. "Anna?" I called out softly, not wanting to disturb the strange calm. No reply. The kitchen was spotless, almost too spotless, like no one had been there. Feeling a little uneasy, I moved toward the hallway, the bottle of wine in my hand feeling heavier with each step. The framed photos lining the walls showed us during happier times. Vacations, moments of laughter, carefree smiles. I climbed the stairs, and as I reached the top, a faint glow caught my attention. Light spilled from the crack in our bedroom door, the only source of illumination in the dark hallway. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Anna's laughter, but something about it felt unfamiliar. It wasn't the laugh I knew from her jokes or her chats with coworkers. This one was softer, lighter, almost flirty. My heart began to race, and my steps slowed. Then, another voice. A man's voice. Deep, relaxed, and unmistakably intimate. I froze outside the door, every nerve in my body tightening. Through the narrow gap, I could see her. Anna was lying on the bed, her legs stretched out casually, her back supported by the pillows. She was wearing the lavender robe I'd given her for our 5th anniversary, the fabric slipping off one shoulder in a way that seemed deliberate, even staged. Her phone was propped on a pillow in front of her, angled just so for the camera. She didn't notice me. "This weekend?" "Absolutely," she said, her tone playful and low. "I'd love that." She smiled, a wide, unguarded smile I hadn't seen in ages. It was the kind of smile I used to think was meant only for me. The man's voice crackled faintly through the speaker. Though his words were muffled, his tone left no room for doubt. It was intimate, personal. "See you soon, babe," he said. The ground seemed to shift beneath me. My fingers tightened around the wine bottle, the cold seeping into my palm as my chest constricted, every breath feeling heavier. I stepped back, my foot brushing against the door. Creaked. Anna's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine. Her expression shifted instantly from relaxed to panicked. "Lucas," she stammered, scrambling to grab her phone. Her hands fumbled as she swiped at the screen, cutting off the call. I stayed silent, rooted to the spot as I watched her. The weight of the moment was suffocating, pressing down on both of us. Anna sat frozen on the bed, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. Her face turned red, guilt and something else. Defensiveness, maybe, flashing across her features. "Lucas, I can explain," she blurted out, her voice trembling but carrying an edge of desperation. I didn't say a word. Leaning against the doorframe, I crossed my arms, letting the tension of the moment hang heavy in the air. Her gaze darted nervously between her phone and me. "It's not what you think," she added quickly, the words hollow and unconvincing in the charged silence between us. "Not what I think." My voice came out low, steady even, though the pounding in my chest felt anything but calm. "You were lying in our bed, calling another man babe and making weekend plans. So please, Anna, help me out here. What exactly am I supposed to think?" She opened her mouth as if to respond, but quickly shut it again. Her face drained of color. "He's just a friend," she finally said, the words sounding forced, like she'd rehearsed them but still wasn't convinced herself. "A friend," I repeated, the disbelief creeping into every syllable. "Since when do friends get that laugh? Or make plans with you while you're in our bedroom, wearing that?" I motioned toward her robe, the loose fabric barely clinging to her shoulder. Her jaw tensed, her eyes flickering between defensiveness and something close to desperation. "You don't understand," she muttered under her breath. "You're right," I shot back, the thin thread of composure I had snapping. "I don't understand. So why don't you spell it out for me?" Anna exhaled slowly, sitting up a little straighter as if preparing herself. "Lucas, you've been distant," she said, her voice soft but trembling. "Always at work, always exhausted. When you are home, it's like I'm invisible." Invisible. The word cut deep. "So your answer to that was what? Sneak around behind my back and let some guy fill the space?" I stared at her, disbelief turning into something sharper. "That's how you deal with feeling invisible?" Her eyes flashed. "It wasn't like that," she snapped, her voice climbing. "It started as nothing. Just someone to talk to. Someone who actually noticed me." I couldn't look away from her. My mind was spinning too fast to process it all. For a long stretch, the only sound was the faint hum from her phone, still clenched tightly in her hand. "And now?" I asked, my voice colder than I meant it to be. "What is it now, Anna? Because it sure as hell doesn't look like just talking anymore." Her grip on the phone tightened. Her shoulders dropped slightly. "I don't know," she admitted, the words barely louder than a whisper. "I don't know what it is anymore." A bitter laugh escaped me as I took a step back, the bottle of wine still dangling from my hand. "You don't know," I said. "That's reassuring." Anna scrambled to her feet, panic flashing across her face. "Lucas, wait. Please," she pleaded. "I never meant for this to happen. I was lonely, and you—" "Don't," I interrupted, the sharpness in my voice cutting through whatever excuse she was about to offer. "Don't put this on me." I turned, the floor creaking under my weight as I made my way toward the stairs. She called my name again, but I didn't stop. That night, I ended up at Jake's house, my closest friend since college. The moment he opened the door and saw my face, he didn't need to ask questions. He just stepped aside and let me in. We sat in his living room, and I told him everything. Anna, the phone call, the look on her face when she saw me standing there. Jake listened in silence, but his jaw tightened the longer I spoke. By the time I finished, he dragged a hand through his hair and let out a long breath. "Man," he muttered, "I don't even know what to say." "There's nothing to say," I replied, slumping back into his couch. "I don't even know what to do." Jake leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "What do you want to do, Lucas?" he asked carefully. "Because whatever it is, you can't let her twist this into something it's not." I nodded slowly, the answer slipping out before I'd fully thought it through. "I need to confront her," I said, the words landing heavy. "No more excuses, no more dancing around it. I need to hear the truth, the whole truth." Jake's expression hardened as he nodded. "Good, but don't let her turn this on you. You deserve to know what's really going on, no matter how ugly it gets." I stayed at Jake's that night, unable to stomach the thought of returning home. But by morning, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. The weight of what lay ahead sat heavy in my chest as I drove back. When I walked into the house, Anna was in the kitchen, stirring her coffee like nothing had happened. She glanced up as I stepped inside, her expression unreadable. "Lucas," she said quietly, setting the mug aside. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. "That depends," I replied flatly. "Are you actually going to tell me the truth this time?" Her cheeks flushed, and her gaze dropped to the floor. "I've told you everything," she mumbled. "It's not what you think. Stop lying to me, Anna." My voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. "I deserve better. If you can't be honest, then there's nothing left to say. For a long moment, she said nothing at all, her eyes fixed on the tile floor beneath her feet. Anna let out a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears as she finally met my gaze. "You're right," she whispered, her voice so soft I almost missed it. "I haven't told you everything." I stood there, her words hanging in the air like a weight pressing down on my chest. "Then start talking," I said, sharper than I meant to. Her fingers curled around the edge of the counter, gripping it like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She glanced at the coffee mug in front of her, staring into it as if the answers might somehow be there. "It started months ago," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "At first, it was just talking. We met at a conference in Seattle, a marketing event. He was easy to talk to, charming. I didn't think much of it then." "Seattle," I cut in, my mind scrambling to piece things together. I remembered that weekend. She had told me she was working late, pulling an all-nighter for some client pitch. Anna gave a small nod, guilt flickering across her face. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overthink it. I told myself it wasn't a big deal." She paused, her grip on the counter tightening. "But then we started texting. It was innocent at first, I swear. It just felt good. I liked feeling noticed, seen." Her words landed harder than I expected, each one cutting a little deeper. "So, when did it stop being innocent, Anna?" I asked, my voice calm but cold. Her eyes darted to the side as she hesitated. "I don't know," she muttered. "Maybe when I started looking forward to his messages more than yours. Or when I made excuses to see him. I didn't plan for this to happen. It just did. It just happened," I repeated, the bitterness curling around my words. "You didn't accidentally book a hotel room, Anna. You didn't accidentally call him babe. Let's not pretend this was some accident." Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time, she looked truly defeated. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said quietly. I need you to understand how lonely I've felt. You've been so wrapped up in work, in everything else, that I felt like I didn't matter anymore." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "So now it's my fault," I said, shaking my head. "You're blaming this on me because I've been working to provide for us?" "No," she snapped, her voice breaking. "I'm not blaming you, Lucas. I'm trying to explain how it got this far." Her words hung between us, suffocating the space like thick smoke. "Who is he?" I demanded after a long pause. Anna's eyes widened just enough for me to notice, and she instinctively took a step back. "Lucas. Who is he?" The words left no room for negotiation. She swallowed hard before answering. "His name is Matthew," she said, barely audible. "He's married too. I never meant for it to go this far. But now it's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, disbelief ringing in every syllable. "Do you even hear yourself? You've built this entire mess of lies and now you're telling me it's complicated? What exactly is complicated about lying to my face and cheating on me, Anna?" Her mouth opened, but before she could respond, the doorbell rang. The sudden chime sliced through the tension like a knife. We both froze. "I'm not expecting anyone," I said, already moving toward the door. Anna's face paled. Her eyes widened with something I could only describe as fear. "Lucas, wait." She rushed forward, panic tightening her voice. "Don't." I ignored her. My hand was already on the doorknob. When I pulled it open, I was greeted by a tall man in his mid-30s, dark-haired with the kind of easy confidence that made my stomach twist. "Lucas, I assume?" he said smoothly, like he was introducing himself at a barbecue. I stiffened, gripping the door tighter. "And who the hell are you?" His eyes didn't waver. "I'm Matthew." Time seemed to stop. The voice, it was him, the same man I'd heard through the phone, the man Anna had let into our life without me knowing. I turned slowly to look at Anna, who stood rooted a few feet behind me, her face drained of color. "Anna," I said, each word cutting like ice. "Do you want to explain this to me?" Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Matthew's gaze flicked between us, his expression calm. Too calm, like none of this was out of the ordinary. "Well, this is awkward," Matthew said with a dry chuckle, stepping over the threshold like he owned the place. I fixed him with a glare sharp enough to cut steel. "You've got 5 seconds to explain why you're here before I throw you out," I said, my voice like ice. "Lucas, wait!" Anna's voice finally broke through, shaky and uncertain as she stepped closer. "Matthew, you shouldn't be here." He barely glanced her way, his attention locked onto me. "I came to clear the air," he said, folding his arms across his chest. "Figured it was time we all got on the same page." I blinked, struggling to wrap my head around the sheer audacity. "The same page," I repeated, my tone dangerously low. "You think barging into my house and playing mediator is going to fix this?" Anna moved beside him, her hands raised as if she could smooth over the chaos unraveling around us. "Matthew, please," she pleaded. "This isn't helping." "Oh, isn't it?" he shot back, raising an eyebrow. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like he still doesn't have the full story." My jaw tightened, dread seeping into every corner of me. "What full story?" Matthew's eyes flicked back to mine, and a smug grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Did she tell you about the baby yet?" The room spun. Anna's gasp pierced the silence, her hand flying to her mouth. "Matthew!" she hissed, panic dripping from every syllable. I could barely hear them. The blood rushing in my ears drowned everything else out. "The baby," I repeated, barely able to force the words out. Matthew leaned casually against the doorframe, the picture of arrogance. "That's right. Anna's pregnant," he said, smirking. "And it's mine." The air left my lungs as if someone had sucker-punched me. My vision blurred at the edges, and for a moment, I thought my legs might give out. I turned to Anna, my voice trembling with rage I could barely contain. "Is this true?" She took a step toward me, tears brimming and spilling down her cheeks. "Lucas, I was going to tell you. You didn't know how," I finished for her, my voice rising. "So instead, you let him do it? You thought it'd be better coming from him?" I jabbed a finger at Matthew, who stood there like he was watching the best drama of the year unfold. "Lucas, I'm sorry," Anna's voice cracked, breaking under the weight of it all. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Stop saying that," I roared, slamming my hand against the doorframe hard enough to make the walls shake. "You don't get to act like this just happened to you, Anna. You made these choices. You decided to betray me." Matthew let out a low whistle, clearly enjoying himself. "Well, this is getting intense. Maybe I should." "You should leave," I snapped, cutting him off. He held up his hands in mock surrender, smug as ever. All right, no need to get violent." He stepped back but paused just long enough to glance at Anna. "Call me later." Before I could stop myself, I slammed the door in his face, the sound reverberating through the house. I stood there for a long moment, my hand still gripping the knob, trembling. When I finally turned, Anna was still standing in the middle of the room, wiping her face with the sleeve of that damn robe. "How long?" I asked, my voice like glass, fragile but sharp. She blinked, confused. "What? How long have you been lying to me?" I repeated, each word slow and deliberate. "How long has this been going on?" Anna exhaled shakily, her shoulders sagging under the weight of the truth. "Almost a year," she admitted, barely able to meet my eyes. "A year." The room tilted again. "You've been living a double life for a year," I said, as if hearing it aloud might make it easier to believe. "It wasn't like that," she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. "I wasn't trying to hurt you, Lucas. You weren't trying to hurt me?" I cut in, laughing bitterly. "Anna, you've destroyed everything. Our marriage, our trust. And now you want me to believe this wasn't supposed to happen." She covered her face with her hands, her sobs muffled behind trembling fingers. Couldn't look at her. The woman standing in front of me felt like a stranger, someone I no longer recognized. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. Anna's cries echoed behind me, following me as I stepped into the cool Portland night. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove aimlessly, the quiet streets of Portland stretching endlessly before me. The city lights smeared across the windshield as I drove, my mind unraveling with each mile. Every excuse, every distant glance, and every lie I'd brushed aside played on repeat, taunting me with the clarity I had ignored for too long. At some point, I found myself parked in front of Jake's house. His porch light cast a warm glow, and through the window, I could see him lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone with his dog nestled at his feet. I knocked softly. The door opened almost immediately, and the concern on his face deepened the moment he saw me. "Lucas," he said, stepping aside without hesitation. "What happened?" I sank onto his couch, staring at the floor as my hands trembled. "She's pregnant," I said, the words sour in my mouth. Jake froze mid-step. "Wait, what?" "And it's not mine," I added, my voice hollow. He exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair as he processed it. "Man, I don't even know what to say. That's a whole new level." I nodded absently. "It's Matthew's. He showed up at the house. Told me himself." Jake blinked, struggling to keep up. "He showed up? Seriously, what the hell is wrong with that guy?" "I don't know," I muttered. "And honestly, I don't care anymore. I'm done, Jake. I just can't." Jake sat across from me, his brow furrowed as he tried to piece it together. "She lied to you for a whole year, and now she's carrying his kid." I finished for him. Jake shook his head. "Yeah, man, I'd say that's more than enough reason to walk away." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the low hum of the ceiling fan overhead. "You need to protect yourself," Jake said eventually. "Whatever comes next, don't let her twist this back on you." The next morning, I called a lawyer. By the end of the day, the divorce was in motion. My lawyer didn't pull punches. We combed through everything, the emails, the texts, even the recording of her call with Matthew. I didn't want a penny from Anna. I just wanted out. Surprisingly, Anna didn't fight it. Whether it was guilt or just sheer exhaustion, she signed every paper without argument, agreeing to every term. After it was finalized, she sent me a single text. "I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope you find happiness." I left it sitting in my inbox for days, staring at it from time to time but never responding. One afternoon, I deleted it. It wasn't closure, but it was as close as I was going to get. The weeks that followed felt heavy, even in their silence. I packed up my life and moved into a small apartment in Northeast Portland. It was bare, walls empty, furniture sparse, but it was mine. Work became my lifeline. The students, blissfully unaware of the wreckage I was sorting through, grounded me. I poured myself into lesson plans, after-school programs, anything that filled the gaps in the day. Jake made sure I didn't disappear entirely. Whenever he noticed me slipping into isolation, he'd drag me out for a beer or convince me to shoot hoops, anything to keep me tethered to reality. One evening, we sat on the patio of a small bar, the amber glow of string lights flickering overhead. "You're doing all right," Jake said, watching me as he nursed his drink. "Better than I thought you would, honestly." "Thanks, I guess," I replied, swirling the last of my beer. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You're not carrying it anymore. The anger, the weight of everything she did. It's not hanging on you the same way." I sat with that for a moment, realizing he was right. The ache was still there, but it felt distant, like a scar instead of an open wound. The wounds Anna left behind hadn't vanished, but they no longer dictated my days. They had hardened into scars, still tender at times, but proof I had endured. Months passed, and life gradually found a steadier rhythm. I started making the apartment my own, filling the empty spaces with pieces that felt like home. I picked up hobbies I hadn't touched in years, dusting off my camera for weekend hikes and experimenting in the kitchen, trying out recipes I'd always meant to learn. Friends I hadn't seen in far too long drifted back into my life, their presence a quiet reminder that I hadn't lost everything. One evening, as I sat grading papers, a knock at the door broke the quiet. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, a woman stood there. Early 30s, blonde hair tucked behind her ear, and bright blue eyes that held a hint of hesitation. "Hi," she said softly, offering a tentative smile. "You don't know me, but I'm Kate, Matthew's wife." Her name hit like a shockwave. My grip tightened on the doorframe. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Kate's gaze dropped briefly to the floor before she met my eyes again. "I found out everything," she admitted. "About Anna, about Matthew, and the baby." Her voice wavered, but she held her ground. "I left him." I felt my breath catch in my throat. "Why are you here?" She shifted slightly, as if unsure how much to say. "I thought you deserved to know," she replied. "And I wanted to say I'm sorry for what he did, for what you've been through. I know it doesn't change anything, but..." I stood there, unsure how to process the moment. "I've been where you are," she continued, her voice warm but edged with emotion. "And I know how lonely it feels. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Her offer caught me off guard. I almost told her it wasn't necessary, that I didn't need pity. But there was something in her eyes, an honesty, a shared understanding, that held me still. "Come in," I said quietly, stepping aside. We sat for hours, nursing cups of coffee as we traded stories. Kate's experiences mirrored my own in ways I hadn't expected. The deception, the slow erosion of trust, the unraveling of everything we thought was solid. Her presence brought an odd sense of comfort, a reminder that I wasn't the only one picking up the pieces. Kate didn't become a fixture in my life, but her visit marked a shift, a moment that reminded me healing wasn't about pretending the past didn't exist. It was about moving forward, finding something worthwhile in the aftermath. A year later, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sun dip beneath the Portland skyline. The crisp evening air carried the faint scent of pine, settling around me like an old friend. My life wasn't flawless, but it was mine. Anna had become a distant memory, a chapter that no longer held sway over me. I had let go of more than just her. The anger, the regret, the endless questions that led nowhere. All of it had slowly faded, leaving behind a quiet sense of acceptance. For the first time in years, the road ahead felt open, like a blank canvas waiting for me to decide what to make of it. And I was ready.